putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that under federal law, fugitives cannot legally purchase or possess guns. We've heard from local law enforcement that the Justice Department has issued a memo that forced the FBI NICS background check database to drop more than 500,000 names of fugitives with outstanding arrest warrants because it was uncertain whether those fugitives had fled across state lines. Mr. Bowditch, can you describe why this determination was made by the Justice Department?
Yes, ma'am. That was a decision that was made under the previous administration. It was the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel that reviewed the law and believed that it needed to be interpreted so that if someone was a fugitive in a state, there had to be indications that they had crossed state lines. Otherwise, they were not known to be a fugitive under the law and the way it was interpreted.
That was Dianne Feinstein, rather. I was thinking Barbara Boxer. Dianne Feinstein finding out that Barack Obama released 500,000 people illegally. But it gets worse than that. We were talking about the census, and Michelle Malkin wrote a piece back in 2010 about how Barack Obama politicized the U.S. Census drive, and he used Karl Rove to do a public service announcement that said essentially on video, please answer the 10 easy questions. They're almost the same ones Madison helped write for the first census back in 1790. If you don't join the census bandwagon, James Madison will have lost. Well, Michelle Malkin writes this piece that is absolutely stunning in its condemnation of what Barack Obama did. Now, remember this. In 2010, America was in triage over jobs that had been lost, and we were still losing. Barack Obama was losing jobs. He couldn't turn the economy around, and along comes the census. And instead of just using the census in a nonpartisan, non-political way and just saying, we're going to count the number of Americans, he decided to make it his special interest wish list. So here's what Malkin writes. She says, for the record, I have no beef with the constitutional mandate. I complied by filling out my census form and sending it back with American in the blank for race and ethnicity to register my opposition to governmental racial classifications. I did the same thing. I don't answer black, white, whatever. Obviously, I'm not white. Well, I'm 21% white, so I could technically answer white. But I answer American. I always write it in, American. She goes on to say this, despite apocalyptic suggestions by census officials and some Republican politicians that conservatives are recklessly boycotting the decennial head count, analysis by both right-leaning Daily Caller and left-leaning Plumline websites show that the return rates from conservative counties are in line with national averages. So what makes the Obama census campaign different? First, it's naked left-wing special interest pandering. The White House, get this, at the time, is championing a queer the census movement by pro-gay marriage groups, for example. Now, let me just stop there just a second. They want to queer. I don't know whether they're asking about sexuality. Are you a lesbian, gay, whatever? I don't remember the 2010 census, but I wouldn't shock me at all if they wanted to gather those statistics so they could figure out a way to use those against you. The Commerce Department is working with Open Borders leaders who want to use the census as leverage to stop all immigration raids. Now, we've already just talked about, what they're trying to do right now by saying you shouldn't determine who's a citizen and who's not. And I bet you California's putting special rules that say just put how many people, don't put who's legit and things like this. Now, my hope is that Donald Trump loads the census people in 2020 with a group of folks that are going to legitimately go into these sanctuary areas and say, no, I want to see your birth certificate. I want to make sure you're an American citizen. She goes on to say this, Michelle Malkin. The electoral stakes are high. Some $400 billion in federal funding And most importantly, the apportionment of congressional seats are up for grabs. Instead of a straightforward enumeration of the American population, Obama and the left's identity politic mongers are turning the $1 billion taxpayer-subsidized census public relations drive into a government preferences lobbying bonanza. Now, I'm going to stop there for just a second. We've spent $1 billion in order to be told that, there's a gay thing, all these different things that Barack Obama was pushing, they put it into the agenda, but it gets far worse. She says more galling. The White House manipulation of census worker employment to goose the jobless rate. Last week, the government touted employment figures bolstered by the hiring of temporary workers for the Census 2010. The Census Bureau anticipates it may add nearly 750,000 workers to its payroll by May. Liberal economist Heidi Schersholtz exulted in the Hill. This is the best timed census you could ever dream of, and Team Obama plans to milk it for all it's worth. Over the past several weeks, I've received emails from census workers, and so she goes on to say this. So let me read a couple of these emails from census workers back in 2010. I've been working with the census for 2 weeks, and every day I shake my head at the blatant inefficiency and deliberate misuse of taxpayer money. Specifically, we've been doing enumeration for those who do not have a home, the homeless in shelters, soup kitchens, and in targeted non-sheltered outdoor locations such as parks, subway stations, etc. I personally have been sent to check on shelters that were already determined to be day programs during the preceding round of quality control. Yet they pay me mileage and hourly wage to go back and make sure that there are only still day programs. I walk through parks and parking lots looking for homeless people to enumerate, not even by talking to them, but just by observing their race, sex, and approximate age. The way the process has been set up by government bureaucracy is so backwards and prevents a person who is industrious and efficient from being able to work freely. This is the first job where I'm encouraged to be slow and inefficient. Now, that's the prevailing messages are along those lines. This is the government that condones unionization for the very same reason. This is the government that penalizes high performers. So I'll go to the next one. Last summer, I participated in the Address Canvassing AC project. What this entailed was walking around a neighborhood, literally door to door with a little handheld computer. My job was not to enter addresses so that these people could receive their form, but to make sure the addresses that the first wave of people put into the system and appeared on the computer were actually there. Mostly it was me getting paid $15.25 an hour plus mileage to take my dog for a walk and push a few buttons. In an average suburban neighborhood where the houses are somewhat close to each other, it was no problem to do 35 to 40 addresses per hour once you learn how to quickly enter the data into the computer. The census said that I should be doing about 12 to 15 per hour. My direct bosses told me that I should not be doing 35 to 40 because it was making them and other people look bad. So instead of walking at a snail's pace, I just did my 35 to 40 per hour, doubled my time when I submitted my hours. Again, sorry for the tax grab, but I was told not to be so darned efficient or else I'd be cut. I had the great pleasure of working for the Address Canvassing last spring. Here's another one. I was hired in early April for a job that was to be completed by the first week of July. Have a military background in HR, and the whole process left me with blood squirting from my eyes. I worked the field for 4 days so I would know what to do. The remainder of my time was spent sitting in a McDonald's to have a daily progress meeting with each of the enumerators. I was paid from the time I left my house to the time I got home, plus mileage. I was told to pad the time or mileage to cover my McDonald's food since I was camping in a booth all day. For that, I was paid $11.75 an hour. Really good crew. We were done by the second week of May. Philly was going nuts because our region was getting so close to getting done so fast, but there was nothing we could do to slow it down another 2 months. I never saw such a mismanaged outfit in all my life. Shook my head in total disbelief. So those are the types of stories that these people were telling in 2010 at a time when Obama couldn't find a job if it was, his wallet, his back pocket of his jeans. And people squandering our funding. These people don't care about your money. They don't care about your well-being. They don't care about how good of a job you get. They don't care if you work at all. All they care about is fleecing people. If you want to work, come to the party, baby. They will fleece you like everybody else. You want to play by the rules. You want to be, hold people accountable. They will get rid of you with a quickness. That's what we're dealing with. And these people want you to believe they care, that they really want to help you. And everybody else that these special interest groups that they're talking about, they manipulate everything that they put their fuzzy little crooked hands on, and all for the sake of power. I don't know of a true conservative I've ever met that is anywhere close to being that devious.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.